welcoming everyone to this session on trade and investment of the second Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue. And I'm very much delighted to have Dr. Parshraj Pandey, Chairman, South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment, Southi from Nepal as the chair of this session. We also have 6 distinguished panelists from this region. And we all know them, but just for formalities, I want to mention their name. Professor Mustafizur Rahman, Distinguished Fellow, Center for Policy Dialogue, Dhaka, Bangladesh. Dr. Rajan Sudhesh Ratna, Deputy Head, United Nations ESCAP, South Asia and Southwest Asia Office, New Delhi. Dr. Nisha Taneja, Professor, ICRIER, India, New Delhi, India. Dr. Chandra Shekhar Dhakal, Senior Lecturer, Royal Thimphu College, Royal University of Bhutan. Mr. Wimon Pungkong, Director, Office of Research, Development and Promotions, International Institute for Trade Development, Thailand, and Ms. Suhashini Abhishange, Director of Research, Varied Research. So with this, over to you, Dr. Pandey, to conduct this session. One thing I just want to check with you. We have 6 speakers. We can spend around 8 to 10 minutes each of them. Each they can spend. But then we'll have around 25 to 30 minutes for question and answer, open discussion. How do you like to have the session conducted? So if you want to have any support from SANEM team, please tell us. That time we will, our SANEM team will be helping you to read out questions from the chat box. At the same time, assist you to guide you if someone raise hand. So over to you, Dr. Pandey.
Okay, thank you, Shalim. And good afternoon, everybody. As one of the co-organizers, let me welcome all the panelists and participants in this second Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue, and particularly in the third session, Trade and Investment. I would like to thank Dr. Shalim for taking the lead in organizing this second Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue, and also colleagues from SANEM for their logistic support. Well, as all of us know, trade and investment was one of the initial 6 sectors identified by second BIMSTEC ministerial meeting in 1998. That is 24 years back. And BIMSTEC member already signed BIMSTEC Free Trade Area Framework Agreement with the objective of stimulating trade and investment in the region. We have also formed trade negotiation committee, which has already started. Is in the process of negotiating that trade liberalization process. And we have also formed other 7 working groups related to customs, related to trade and services, related to investment, trade facilitation, some among others. However, the progress until now is hardly tangible, despite huge prospects in BIMSTEC as a region, as well as among member countries. Well, we have identified this trade and investment as one area for regional cooperation. Since then, I think there have been significant changes globally, as well as within the region in economic spheres. First, the earth is getting warmer at faster rate than it was anticipated during that period, 20-25 years back. That is, the problem of climate change has become much more imminent than previously used to be. And the second change I see is the region is engulfed into cobweb of bilateral trade agreements. Not only trade agreements, other agreements related to trade also. And one of our colleagues, Dr. Prabir Dey, he argued that BIMSTEC FTA, by just being a FTA, may not be able to deepen intra-BIMSTEC economic relation. That is, another change I see in the region. And the third change is all four Ldc members of BIMSTEC. All the Ldc members of BIMSTEC are in the process of graduating and from Ldc category, and bigger members, India and Thailand, are in a stress to avoid middle income trap. That is the another significant change I see in the region. The fourth change is, of course, is about COVID pandemic, and it has exposed the vulnerability of our economies, its structure, as well as its supply chain. And the fifth change is, of course, this the recent development, that's Russia Ukraine war, together with economic sanctions against Russia. And I think it has put global economy in the verge of stagflation. And global economy is also going to suffer supply chain disruption. Maybe particularly in energy, and also in food grains. So here, to borrow Dr. Salim's yesterday's word, now we have extended syllabus. And this extended syllabus, we are going to discuss the prospects of promoting, or I would say, what it means to promote trade and investment in BIMSTEC region. So to discuss this issue, as Dr. Shalim has already indicated and mentioned, we have very eminent panelists drawn from BIMSTEC region. And again, let me introduce, as a moderator and chair of the session, let me introduce our distinguished panelists. We have Professor Mustafiz Rahman, as a distinguished fellow in CPT Dhaka. We have Dr. Rajan Sudesh Ratna, as Deputy Head, UNSCAP South and Southwest Asia Office, New Delhi. We have Nishat Taneja, Professor at ICRIER, New Delhi. We have Dr. Wimon Pongkong, Director, Office of Research, International Institute for Trade and Development, Thailand. We have Dr. Chandrasekhar Dhakal, Royal Thimphu College, Royal University of Bhutan. And we have Subhasini Abhay Singhe, Research Director, Vertex Research, and she's from Sri Lanka. Well, I mean, before I start this session, I have one request to Dr. Shalim. Well, I mean, here, I mean, in my locality, some maintenance work on electricity, and that and also I mean in internet that's going on, and my electricity supply and internet connection is very, I mean, it's uncertain and fluctuating. So if I lose connection, I request you to take over and continue the session. Right, that is on my request. And my second, I mean, you have asked me, I mean, how I'm going to conduct these sessions. First, I just want to provide, I mean, 5 minutes, 5-6 minutes each for each of the panelists, I mean, to give their views on the theme of the session. That's trade and investment in BIMSTEC region. So for that, well, I've allocated maybe 30-35 minutes, I mean, for that, I mean, initial remarks. And after that, and based on the remarks of the panelists, I'll put some direct questions to the panelists and request them to answer those questions maybe in 3 to 4 minutes. So maybe it's 20 minutes, around 25 minutes. That's for second round. And after that, I'll open sessions for question and answer. And after that, I'll close the sessions. I mean, this is how I have planned. I mean, I have planned to organize this session. And to start with, let me start with my very good friend, Dr. Mustafiz Rahman, Distinguished Fellow, CPD. Professor Mustafiz, now you have the floor.
Thank you, Posh, a very good friend. Thank you, dear audience, and my very distinguished fellow panelists. Thank you, Salim, and organizers for this, for pursuing in this very important theme persistently and consistently. So I think that that it is very important from various perspectives, and Posh has reminded us of 5 very important points. I would like to add what Posh said with regards to that it was trade and investment were identified as initial 6 points. Now it has been expanded to 14. And the framework agreement was in fact signed in Thailand in 2004. And now we are still talking about, you know, whether the FTA will be signed. So that really speaks about the state of affairs with regard to BIMSTEC. Hopefully, what we understand is that the FTA in goods will be signed. But this is discouraging from the fact that it was supposed to be, you know, one of the distinctive features of BIMSTEC FTA, as distinct from SAFTA, was that it would have included services as well. So that would have given a distinctive feature to BIMSTEC FTA, because I think that in these days and in this world, many of the services are embedded in trade in goods. So without getting into services, I think it is very difficult to really translate our comparative advantages into competitive advantages. So that's really a frustrating point. And also, you are very right that, for example, countries like Bangladesh, which will be graduating in 2026, and we will have to make a very crucial transition from preferential market access driven competitiveness to productivity and skills driven competitiveness. And there, I think that BIMSTEC provides us with enormous opportunities. I think many of the countries in our region and BIMSTEC countries, for example, Bangladesh, our exports have been primarily targeted at the North American and European market. But we know that BIMSTEC also imports a lot from the global market, but not from the region. So that gives us a lot of opportunities. Now, you have mentioned about, PROBIR, and I fully agree that, that just trade and investment is not going to do the trick. I think that what a third element which will be very important is the multimodal connectivity, which is becoming very important. And I'm happy that many things are going on from that perspective. But my concern here is that many of these are very disjointed. And if you cannot triangulate, the triangulation of trade, connectivity and investment, then I think there are opportunities, there will be many missed opportunities. So trade facilitation, logistics connectivity will become very important. From that perspective, I think that the motor vehicle agreement that we have in the BBIN, then the SASEC multimodal connectivity, ASEAN highway connectivity, I think that all these will need to be looked at. The trilateral highway, all these initiatives will need to be looked at from how they can be brought into play in order to stimulate trade and investment. Otherwise, I think that these will be just transport corridors and not economic corridors. For example, in Bangladesh, we are now planning to set up 100 special economic zones, and we are very much hoping that there will be investment from the BIMSTEC region to these special economic zones. But these special economic zones will have to be connected with the BIMSTEC region in order to, as I was mentioning, in order to translate our comparative advantages into competitive advantages. And there, I think that single window at the border coordination, behind the border coordination amongst the BIMSTEC countries would be very important. So I very much agree with what PROBIR is saying. Posh, you have mentioned about COVID and the looming, food prices and food inflation, which is also a major concern for us. And I was doing some work on cooperation within the BIMSTEC region with regard to agriculture. So I think that there are a lot of opportunities for building value chains in the BIMSTEC region, which in the context of what you said is also becoming very important. So I would end here by mentioning, because I hope that there will be another opportunity that you give me. But I think that just BIMSTEC FTA and duty-free, quota-free market access, and we don't know what will be the negative list, what will be the sensitive list, what will be the other conditions, rules of origin. So I am not very, I would say that unless we see the fine prints, it is very difficult how effective it will be. But since the multimodal connectivities in our region is progressing at a very fast pace, I am hopeful that that will drive trade and investment and intra-regional trade. So I think that we should not put much emphasis on just tariffs, but also other non-tariff issues like logistics and trade facilitation. Last point that I will make is that in the WTO, in the context of the WTO, the negotiations that are taking place in agriculture, in fisheries subsidies, in e-commerce, I think that the time has come for BIMSTEC to also coordinate the stance in the WTO, so that the interests and concerns of our countries are also reflected in those negotiations. I think that we should broaden and deepen the ambit of cooperation and just not look at trade and investment. Thank you, Posh.
Thank you, Mustafiz, for underlining the importance of holistic approach for regional cooperation, focusing on all aspects of trade. That's tariff, non-tariff, investment, services, logistics, trade facilitation, customs cooperations, Thanks for that. I'll come to Germany in second round with you. Now I invite Dr. Rajan Sudesh Ratna, is Deputy Head, UNESCAP South and Southwest Asia Office. Dr. Ratna, now over to you.
Thank you, Bhosh Bhai. I would first of all thank Salim Bhai and his team for organizing this very relevant this workshop. And I will pick up from where Professor Mustafiz started. He said he needs to see the fine print of FTA. Actually, in BIMSTEC now, FTA does not excite me anymore, to be very honest. The framework agreement I negotiated, so I know what is the fine print of the negative list, which has undergone any change. And the countries are still very, very suspicious of a trade and investment flow within themselves. So, I mean, till 2 years ago, when I have looked at the lists, it is not even SAFTA plus. So what is happening in SAFTA, if the same thing happens in BIMSTEC, then I am afraid what we are talking, we'll continue to talk, but whether it really transforms into a real, kind of a linkage between trade and investment and what we are talking about, integration, whether it will happen or not. The second thing which I would like to flag and share with you, Mustafiz Bhai talked about, other than FTA, other than tariffs, when we talk about very passionately of bringing the duties down to zero, SARC reached FTA way back. I mean, it started 2006 and 7 to 8 years. Everyone was to be between 1 to 5% or 0 to 5%. But you can see intra-regional trade. In BIMSTEC, again, many members are common here. So even if you talk about plain tariffs to go down to 0%, it is not going to make any dent. And why so? Because the trade cost among these countries are very, very high. I can give you just, if you want to trade in between Bangladesh and India, the tariff equivalent of trade cost is 122%, which includes every cost. So if you reduce from 122%, 5, 10, 15% of the tariff, still an exporter or importer requires a tariff of 110%, which makes it costly for him or her to export. The second thing which we are doing, and I will be circulating it very soon, we are exploring in terms of COVID, because I know when we talk about SARC, we talk about BIMSTEC, there are a lot of cooperation which goes beyond FTA. And there are issues relating to health cooperation, there are trade and investment related cooperation, cooperation in technology and other things. So when we analyzed, we looked at the WTO classification of COVID products, and we found that the average tariff of all these countries is not more than 7 to 10%, which is not much. And in many products which are essential, the duties are 0. Still, if you look at how much the cooperation, how much the trade has happened in 2020, for which the data is available, actually on these medicinal products from 2017 to 19 average, if you take, and then compare with how much it has traded in 2020, within intra-region in BIMSTEC, the trade has actually declined. And that happened also because of these restrictions which were put in. When at one point of time we talk about integrating trade, investment, and other things, when it comes for a life-threatening crisis, and despite having overall framework of knowledge sharing, talking about cooperation in trade, in health, in technology, of cooperation which goes beyond conventional FTAs, on the ground, we have been all working in this area over decades. I don't see even 3 top initiatives which one can take pride that this regional grouping has come out with an innovative solution of saving lives and liberalized trade and investment regime. I mean, we all stopped cross-border trade. When it came for the crisis, no vaccination was available. International flights are not available. Even today, when you go for the price of the container price is triple than what it was pre-COVID. So yes, in terms of economic recovery, all the countries are back to the recovery. Some countries are pre-COVID growth rates, and all these blah 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 things are happening. But when we talk in terms of regional cooperation, there is something seriously wrong about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajan Bhai, for highlighting the issues of trade cost, particularly trade cost in trading within the region, and also the hike in transportation cost after post-COVID, and none of the actions taken by BIMSTEC countries on this regard. Well, thank you for that, for raising those issues. Let me invite Dr. Nisha Taneja. She is professor at ICRIER, New Delhi. Dr. Nisha.
Thank you, Posh. It is really very nice to be amongst friends, and thank you so much, Selim, for inviting me. I think these webinars are very, very precious because they are very stimulating, and it was very nice to hear the earlier 2 speakers, one very optimistic and one very pessimistic. So maybe the truth lies somewhere in between. Now, when we're talking about regional value chains, I think it's already been highlighted by the earlier speakers. We're talking about something very composite. So it has to be, and the 3 major pillars really are trade, investment, and connectivity. And these are the 3 pillars that would create an enabling environment for regional value chains to prosper. So what we need to do is basically remove impediments to trade, investment, and connectivity. Now, the architecture of BIMSTEC is very different from any other regional agreement that we know of. And for most regional groupings, trade is the binding force, and all other aspects revolve around it. And here, how it appears is that basically connectivity is the driving force, and everything else is going to revolve around it. As far back as 2010, ADB had come out with a report, a logistic report on which basically on BIMSTEC, and which basically highlighted the impediments, the strategies, and the possible financing modalities that would improve connectivity in the region. And that report was dormant for a long time. And then in 2017, the same report was updated. This is with the resurgence of BIMSTEC, when it once again was rejuvenated. And now we have the master plan for transport connectivity, which is likely to be unveiled later this month. So on this front, there has been a lot of progress. Now, one thing that we notice in this 2017 report is that it highlighted the importance of IT-driven systems in trade facilitation. And what is also interesting is the fact that this was highlighted pre-COVID. And now with COVID, this aspect has become even more important than before. So in that sense, I think highlighting this aspect was a very, it gave it the right emphasis in this report. And post-COVID, we've seen how digitization has got a push in various aspects. In fact, in India, during the COVID year, FDI actually increased. And a majority of this FDI actually went into software and IT. So, and that was really driving the digitization within the country and for cross-border trade as well. Another point I think that has not been mentioned in the plans, and I'm not very sure whether it's mentioned in the master plan, is about following global conventions, especially something like the TIR convention, which allows for seamless transportation. And here again, I think India is the only country that is a member of the TIR convention, and there is an advantage of following an international convention, because then no single country has the hegemony, and therefore nobody can claim leadership, and everyone is on an equal footing. So even the politics of it is kind of diluted if we follow international conventions. Now, of course, all the countries are members of the Trade Facilitation Agreement. So on that count, every country is trying to meet the requirements of the Trade Facilitation Agreement. And interestingly, I'm sure the other countries also, as India, have action plans to follow, to meet the requirements of the Trade Facilitation Agreement. And the most recent plan that India has brought out on trade facilitation, the action plan actually has 80% of the action points which are TFA plus. So they're looking beyond and looking at, modernizing all procedures in a rapid manner, because there are time frames also that are attached to each of these action points. Another dimension which is likely to be missing in the master plan is the inclusiveness dimension. And Rajan, of course, would be very familiar with this. The UN Global Survey on Digital and Sustainable Trade Facilitation basically collects information from 135 countries, and it provides an index based on the measures that are adopted by all the countries. And now this survey also includes parameters like facilitation for agriculture, SMEs, and gender. And post-COVID, there have been more additions, and now the survey also includes trade facilitation measures adopted by countries in times of crisis. And this includes online publication of emergency trade facilitation measures, coordination between countries on emergency trade facilitation measures, and also the plan to facilitate trade during future crisis. So basically, what's happening is that there are systems that are coming into place to deal with modern challenges. And therefore, all of us do need to align ourselves to the changing scenario. And we don't know how much of it, which means that how much coordination is needed, and how the scope of trade facilitation is expanding a lot, including resilience and other factors. Now on trade, I think both the previous speakers have made very, very valid points. And we know that it has to be, we can't be talking only about tariffs. We have to be talking about behind the border measures and all the other conventional regulatory requirements that we need to go into to have deeper FTAs. And it's not just including trade, not just an FTA, which would include regulatory regimes, but it should be something which would cover trade in goods, services, investment, a chapter on supply chains. We're talking about regional value chains. There has to be a chapter on supply chains as well. So it has to be much broader. And also BIMSTEC should actually be more far-sighted than the agreements that the other countries have with other countries. For instance, in India right now, we're talking about an FTA with the UK, with Australia, with EU. And the chapters are going to be more in alignment with the deep FTAs. And we're already talking about issues like including clauses on SMEs, gender, climate change. So, it just shows that how far behind BIMSTEC is likely to fall if we don't take into account where the other FTAs of each of these countries is moving towards when they're engaging with other countries other than the region that we're talking about. So within trade, I think there's one other aspect that I want to talk about, and which is the Northeastern region. this is going to be very, very important, and it's going to be an important fulcrum for all the BIMSTEC countries. And in India, particularly, we're thinking of actually having not just transport corridors, but economic corridors that would be running through the BIMSTEC region, through the northeastern region. But again, here, this is actually lagging behind even within the BIMSTEC region. This is the lagging region. So there is that much more catching up to be done within the Northeast region. A simple thing like even today, we have commodity restrictions on trade between the Northeast and Bangladesh, commodity restrictions on trade between India and Myanmar. And this is pertaining only to the Northeast region. For instance, there are no commodity restrictions if you looked at Petropol and Bangladesh, but there are restrictions within the Northeast. So we do need to take all these things into account. And if we want to make the Northeast the center, then a lot needs to be done. Here again, we're making progress on the connectivity front, but we're lagging behind on all other fronts. My third point on investment, it's never talked about much because the value of intra-regional investment is very low. There is a historical reason for it, because between India and Bangladesh, there was a negative, they were both on the negative list for investments. The same was true between India and Sri Lanka. So this history has actually had its own repercussions. And even today, the intra-regional FDI flows are not very large. And the conventional drivers of FDI have been tax regimes and regulatory frameworks. But I think a third dimension that we really need to be looking at is the talent base. And that's becoming more and more important. And here, I think Bangladesh offers a very good example where in the ready-made garment sector and even in the IT sector, they have drawn talent from the neighboring countries. So I think that's something we need to be looking at. And from the Indian side, I think there needs to be more awareness on how there are state-wise regulatory barriers. And it's not like, that investment flows, the regulatory regime is the same for the entire country. It varies from state to state. And so that also needs to be kept in mind when we're talking about intra-regional trade. Investment flows. So with that, I think I'll close my initial remarks, and thank you so much, Posh.
Thank you, Nisha. Well, you have raised a host of issues like the importance of connectivity and also the issues of inclusion, and particularly issues of agriculture, issues of PSMEs, and also gender dimension in this regional cooperation, and also issues of lagging region within the countries, and their role in promoting regional cooperation and issues of investment. Okay, thank you for raising all these issues. Well, I think we will discuss this issue in our question and answer sessions. Now I move to Dr. Uyman Punkong, is Director, Office of Research, International Institute for Trade and Development, Thailand. Dr. Punkong, now you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Distinguished participants, can you see me?
Yes,
we can.
Both you are audible and visible.
Okay. It's my great honor to join the panel Trade and Investment in the seminar second day of Bengal Economic Dialogue 2022, Building Resilient BIMSTEC. In the past 5 years, our economies experienced rapid change in economics, social, and technological dimension due to several reasons such as the US-China trade war, accelerating digital technology advancement, and the spread of COVID-19, and recently, Russia-Ukraine war. Our country were impacted by this consequent dynamically, showing a decline in total export value, stagnation in FDI, slow economic growth and also lead to decline in GDP per capita, a rising poverty rate, and more severe inequality. Every country have to deal with pandemic impacts immediately by implementing a stimulus package policy, restoring export sector, encouraging domestic greenfield investment, and securing safety for all citizens. Thailand is one country which is known for having a great control over the pandemics and being able to recover well potentially due to having adequate healthcare system and a great cooperation in all individuals in responding to the pandemic consequence. Now, individual can almost lie normal for economic prospects. Thailand also did recover since 2021. In the 2022, its expected Thai economy will have a growth of 5%, measured due to high export figure, private sector consumption, and the private sector investment. However, among our sector, tourism and logistics sector will not yet fully recover from the pandemic's impacts due to limitation in welcoming international tourism. In addition, in 2022, the overall Thai economy also experienced attention from rising oil price, soaring costs in production, and rising inflation. The tension on our sector show, however, although short-term challenge for Thai economy have to become overcome easily because Thailand have mainly potential economic activity. However, in my opinion, Thai economy is facing long-term challenge which need to solving immediately by reducing export dependency on main market like China, US, and EU, as well as cutting the over dependency on tourism. In addition, we should promote SMB participation in international market and value to produce and service through technology and innovation development, and give high priority in protecting the environment. Thailand have aimed to transform the country to reach a 5 target under the 13 National Economic and Social Development Plan, which run from 2023 to 2018. This plan intends to transform the country in order to advance society and emphasize on high value-added economic growth. That's why this plan is focused on regional trade, investment, and logistic strategy. In addition, it emphasizes to connectivity with the neighboring country, especially in Asia, country to develop trade and investment and logistic system. In the next 5 years, Thailand expects to focus on transportation infrastructure in order to improve connectivity, as well as develop goods and transit regulation, enhance capacity of logistics of service provider, and promote cross-border economic corridor. Under the BIMSTEC, which is considered as an important vehicle for promoting regional cooperation and economic integration in a range of areas, it has focused on trade and investment in collaboration with Thailand and neighboring countries. Due to long-term relationship between trade and investment and culture, the BIMSTEC countries should further their collaboration in the future. In the next 5 years, the BIMSTEC should prioritize the negotiation on a free trade agreement in supporting its member economic growth by reducing barriers in the field that are ready to go together. For the time being, full liberalization is not required due to the diversity of BIMSTEC member country and development inequality. According to the research of International Institute for Trade and Development, or ITD, it points out that Thailand should connect between the BIMSTEC and Southern Economic Corridor of Thailand via Ranong Port in focusing on portual and maritime tourism and promote a wellness and long-stay tourism among our member country. ITD and Economic Institute of the Ministry of Commerce have important role in research, training, and strengthening international cooperation. On behalf of ITD, we are delighted to cooperation with the BIMSTEC in academic area by disseminating its knowledge in bringing the BIMSTEC closer to Thai people and private sector. So this connection will help the BIMSTEC engaging regional value chain, and I do believe that the cooperation between the BIMSTEC member among business and public sector involvement is the key factor for the BIMSTEC sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Punko. Now I move to Dr. Chandrasekhar Dakal. He is with Royal Thimphu College, Royal University of Bhutan. Dr. Dakal, you have the floor.
You have to unmute, Dr. Dakal.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay, am I now audible as well as visible now? Sleep.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Kuzuzambo and greetings from Bhutan to all the panelists and participants. And hello, Salim sir. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to participate. And hello to Dr. Pandey. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. So much had been already discussed, in fact, and nothing much to say from our side, my side. But what I would do is I will try to portray some of the important areas from Bhutan perspectives. And rather than highlighting on a macro level, let me go and highlight micro level. But before that, let me just tell you that I'm just a student of trade and not specialized in BIMSTEC or all in that area. My specialization in development areas, but still that. So from Bhutan's perspective, I would like to emphasize on few points like where trade and investment can really reach our BIMSTEC region, our Bay of Bengal region. Of course, one is an improvement in infrastructure and technology and connectivity, where we have been talking a lot for last 2 days about physical, regulatory, digital infrastructure, and physical water, the air is really important. So from some perspectives, being a laboratory road is an area that we need to focus on, and infrastructure needs to be there because transportation cost and transaction cost is really huge landlocked country like Bhutan, and that gives very much a barrier to trade. And so BIMSTEC need to bridge the infrastructure gap there. One area, and also our BIMSTEC should help small landlocked country like Bhutan and Nepal, to develop a connectivity with other countries, like Asian countries at a global level. So that will really help as a region to develop as well. So other one that I like to highlight is on the regulatory infrastructure. So let me put it in that way: regulatory infrastructure, which can broadly take into non-tariff barriers. Much had been already discussed, but let me give some examples, concrete examples from Bhutan. So long delay at the border to clear the goods are some of the challenges that witness from Bhutan side, the traders are facing. For example, on average, it takes at least 15 days to clear a good simply across the border. I'm sure the situation is similar in India and Bangladesh as well. So, but whereas if you take globally, the other part of the world, including even in Asia, Africa, sorry, it takes only 6 hours. So there's a huge gap, just to clear a simple good. So there is we can say how much we are doing, compared to other countries. Then only we can benchmark ourselves, saying that either whether we are achieving the goal or not. So other thing is that plethora of paperwork that we need, restrictive policies and regulations, and insufficient logistic cargo handling are other challenges that our traders and we are facing within the regions. For example, just to give you an example, a Bhutanese exporter needs to submit an array of documents and submit at least 50 times to just to deliver a good to the next region. That is a huge things to think about. So many a time Bhutanese consignments were also not allowed because of uncertainty of regulation and at the border level. So these were some of the challenges and weak regulatory infrastructure. When it comes to digital infrastructure, limited computerization and automatic system is one of the area that the region is currently going on. We have that. So weak laboratory testing facilities. We don't have a very strong testing facilities. Just to give an example, recently government of Bhutan has to seize a tons of consignments being imported from India just because the testing was not done properly. So those kind of, and same goes with the other way around. When exporting from Bhutan, these issues are not new. So BIMSTEC should invest in enhancing the border facilities like efficient logistic for cargo handling, telecommunication, warehouse, cold storage, accommodation facilities, foreign exchange center, electrical scanner, better security systems. All these things will help, improve our, trade. And the other point, of course, as have been said, also Dr. Pandey also said about FDI, attract more FDI, and most of our least developed countries, the member of BIMSTEC are graduating, and more so Bhutan is already in the process of graduating. So obviously Bhutan will lose most of the, benefits of being LDC, and I don't know what the BIMSTEC is gonna, at what level BIMSTEC is gonna help on that area. The other area that, of course, Dr. Pandey also said, and I did not hear much from other panelists except from Dr. Nisa about environment, business environment. How good is our business environment? What BIMSTEC is really doing on improving our business environment. Just take an example of World Bank, which says ease of doing business. Out of 190 countries, all our BIMSTEC countries, the region, Bay of Bengal region itself, falls below 50 rank. For example, India is 63. The first is better and the lower is high. Worst business environment. India comes 63. Nepal 89. Sri Lanka, Nepal 94. Sri Lanka 99. Bangladesh 168. In 190. So what are we doing? For example, it just takes like 6 times longer to start a business in economic rank below 50 than above 50. So are we doing enough? I don't think so. So we need to work on that region. And Bay of Bengal region should also invest to enhance conducive business environment by maybe build business confidence, invest in S&M enterprises, encourage more private participants, reduce cost of doing business. The other area that we may want to invest is thinking out of the box. We have to do away with the conventional way of doing business, invest in a new business model, meaning leverage digital technologies. Like why can't we install electrical scanner at the border so that it will be smoother, electrical handling at the of the goods. So also we can invest in e-commerce between the regions, so it enables direct contact between suppliers and buyers. For example, our suppliers in rural suppliers from Bhutan can directly be in contact with the buyers from Bangladesh. So huge cost will be delayed and there will be much easier transactions. And also explore e-payment system, much has been discussed yesterday as well. So common mode for payments should be explored as well. The other area that I really want to emphasize here is on investment climate resilient smart trade technology. We have been talking too much about what BIMSTEC is doing versus Asian, but we have not really thought about, are we really doing enough for future generation as well? For example, climate extremes are another major challenges for Bhutan. I'm sure it's all for Bay of Bengal regions as well. It's quite disturbing to know that barriers to trade in environmental goods are more prevalent than barriers to trade in carbon intensified fossil fuels in our region. Much at the same point that Dr. Lisha also highlighted earlier. So implementing climate smart policies will come at of course, it will come at a very huge price, but the inaction of not doing it will be very, very high for our generation and the next generation as well. Just to take an example, if we do not act now, then the impact of not investing on climate will be like $792 trillion into 2100, right? So that means it's a huge, and some of that will come to BIMSTEC and to our region also. So we really need to act properly and invest on climate. So like COVID-19, we have been talking a lot. Climate change knows no boundary. So emissions in one country will have a really, very real impact on other countries as well. So proactive measures from BIMSTEC regions that needed to invest on climate-proof infrastructure for sustainable trade. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Dakal. Now, I move to Subhashini.
Hello.
Hello. Over to you, Subhashini.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I think I would like to, I do sympathize with one of the comments that was posted on the chat box saying, what's the outcome at the end of all these sessions? And that's often a feeling that I get whenever I attend South Asian, related events as well as BIMSTEC related events. So it is an interest, I think the world is at a very turning point today, because everything around us has changed dramatically. So what is important to understand is, with these changes, there are a lot of challenges that our countries face and deal with internally as well as externally. So where does BIMSTEC and regional cooperation stand in this changed environment? And is it going to make BIMSTEC more relevant or less relevant? Is an interesting thing to think about, because most of our countries face a lot of internal challenges. Our governments have to put a lot of energy and effort to solve many energy, food-related challenges that they're facing. And of course, countries like Sri Lanka, enormous debt stress. So there is a lot of public outcry and politicians, and then there are elections coming up in most countries. So it's interesting to see whether the governments have energy or interest in really engaging in regional cooperation at a time like that. But at the same time, it is also important to understand the external challenges the region faces also makes it important. Are we going to deal with a lot of external global challenges individually, or are we better off when we face them together? So to name a few, of course, everybody says climate change, right? So are we better off trying to handle climate change and the problems that comes with it alone, or are we better off when we combine our efforts as a region? And also geopolitics, we cannot, especially Bay of Bengal and Indian Ocean is a very important point, important part in the world where geopolitical tensions will be felt very, very, very intensely. And there is already, it's not Russia-Ukraine war, definitely has even further split the world. But even before, there was this idea of the world getting into a new Cold War and getting split between China and United States. And this is interesting to see how does this impact regional cooperation and regional efforts, because I found it interesting just to look at the vote on Russia-Ukraine sanctions at the UN General Assembly, and 4 of the SAARC countries voted in favor and 4 of the SAARC countries abstained, right? So does this mean that actually some internal tension into which side does South Asian countries stand? Although all of us know we don't want to pick sides, but maybe it's quite likely that we'll be forced to pick sides because of various internal and external situations. And India is clearly, there is a lot of interest in India-US alliance, and it is growing stronger. So what does that mean for countries which are closer to China? So it is very interesting to see how all of these things really impact the region. So just to put a thought forward, and all of us face these challenges, and it will be very interesting whether our countries, at least at forums like this, can share lessons and learn from each other about how we are tackling these problems. Then Dr. Nisha and others mentioned about the digitization and trade facilitation, and I'm sure, Dr. Nisha, the trade facilitation commitments of our countries vary significantly at the WTO. Sri Lankan commitments are really, really disappointing, especially for a country at a geographically strategic position, which should be a gateway to the Indian subcontinent, to have such low commitments at the WTO TFA was really sad. But the reality is it will be very interesting to discuss where we stand. I have had discussions with India, and I've been impressed with the commitment and interest in India to improve trade facilitation. But I was thinking in forums where we actually try to learn from each other how we overcome challenges and what each one of us are doing to meet TFA or to go beyond TFA. So I think there can be a lot of learning, and because most of the problems we face are very common, and it is also time for us to think. When I hear some of the problems like Dr. Rajan mentioned about India, Bangladesh, or our Bhutanese speaker spoke about Bhutan and India. So I wonder whether it is easier to tackle these issues at a regional forum, or because not all members may be interested in these issues because they seem so bilateral, or is it better handled bilaterally? Or does small countries, when they're dealing with India, have better bargaining power if they get united at a regional forum like this? Has smaller countries ever thought of doing that? They do it very frequently at WTO. So it'll be interesting to think, can Bhutan, Nepal, Maldives, some of the smaller countries actually really get together and can work together to say, you know, for India, we need to work on these things. So it's an interesting thing to think about, because it'll be challenging to bring people who are not equally facing the same problems interested in those problems. So with those thoughts, I will hand over to the chair, and we'll be happy to answer any questions later.
Thank you, Dr. Subhashini. Now we have completed the first round of our discussions. Now, I want to take into second round of discussion. And in second round of discussions, let me put direct questions to Professor Mustafiz. Well, Mustafiz, you have done a lot of work on this graduation, Bangladesh graduations, its impact, its transitional strategy. I know there are a lot of things. Now, I want to put questions on behalf of Dr. Dakal, who raised that. I mean, how BIMSTEC countries can help these graduating countries in the graduation process as well as post-graduation. Professor Mustafiz?
Yeah,
now you have maybe 2-3 minutes. Now
okay.
I think so we have just 30 minutes left.
Okay. No, I'll be very brief. You know, what our Bhutanese friend has posed is important, and Posh, you yourself also mentioned about LDC graduation and the challenges. Obviously, out of the 4 LDCs, 3 of us, Nepal and Bangladesh, will be graduating in 2026. Bhutan will be graduating in 2023. So there will be a lot of loss of the international support measures which are in place for the LDCs. Particularly, I think preferential market access, and for Bangladesh, obviously pharmaceutical sector and the waiver from patent and license requirements. All these factors will have important implications. Now, I think what BIMSTEC can do, and BIMSTEC-wide cooperation can do, is to refocus our opportunities to the region. I think that could be a major strategy for us. I did a recent research on the opportunities, and there are enormous opportunities in the region. For us, you know, this regional market imports huge amount of goods and services from the global market. So I think that that if we can create supply side capacities, attract investment through the initiatives which have been mentioned by many of our colleagues. So not everything is lost. There are many initiatives and measures which are ongoing. So if you can take advantage of that, then the regional market becomes a major source of export for us. So I think that if we can carry forward the ongoing measures in the areas of IT, in the areas IT cooperation, in the areas of transport cooperation, multimodal connectivity, trade facilitation, and logistics, I think that gives us an opportunity to get into the regional market. So regional integration in BIMSTEC should be seen as an integral part of Ldc graduation strategy, sustainable Ldc graduation strategy of the three countries which we are mentioning, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Nepal. Thank you, Coach. Very briefly.
Thank you, Mustafiz, for very brief but focused answer. Now let me turn to Dr. Ratna. Well, Dr. Ratna, you were one of the negotiators for BIMSTEC EFTA, and after that, I mean, you have been working in intergovernmental agencies, UNSCAP, and there was one question, particularly on the relevance in the chat box, particularly on the relevance of this kind of dialogue and other issues. So, my question to you is how multilateral agencies can help in promoting trade and investment in BIMSTEC regions, and also you are also working on issues of think tank. How the activities of think tank bolster this regional cooperation process. Over to you, Dr. Ratna.
You have to unmute, please, Ratna. You have to unmute yourself, Rajanji. Yes. Yes, it's unmuted now.
Yeah, what I was saying is Salim Bhai has raised his hand before me. So, Dr. Pandey, maybe you can give him a floor, or should I start the question, answering the question?
So, first you start. First you start that. Then maybe after
Okay.
that, Salim would respond.
Okay. Thank you. I would make 3 points, and looking at the chat box also, which Professor Praveer Day has asked, and they are all linked to the LDC also graduation. One is towards the LDC graduation, as Professor Mustafiz has said, regional integration is very, very important. But the question is, if really all the countries in BIMSTEC want to help the LDCs, irrespective of the fact that they graduate, the free flow of market access for treating them to be continues as LDC would be very important. This exception was made in SAFTA, and it's there in the article of SAFTA that when Maldives were graduating, their rights, despite graduating in SAARC, were continued to be that of LDC. And I think now when the BIMSTEC FTA has not been signed, the text is still open, this kind of a provision need to be built in. And that also brings to the question of Dr. Pandey, what multilateral institutions can do. 2 things we have been, or rather 3 things we have been working on. One, we have been working through our knowledge products and in collaboration with think tanks in South Asia, which we have formed through South Asia Network on SDG SANS, in doing these kind of knowledge and dissemination to the policymakers, bringing various stakeholders on the road to put the pressure on the government to bring policy changes. Otherwise, governments on their own, and especially when there was a global economic recession way back, and then now COVID, each country is struggling with its own stimulus packages, coming out with financing for development, economic growth, and then liberalizing the markets. Regional integration brings in more challenge because there is always a suspicion. So that can be allayed through this kind of mechanism of SANs or think tanks talking about and bringing what are the benefits which can come in through. The third, which BIMSTEC countries can do for other graduating LDCs, is not only market access, but also financing for development. You know, aid for trade and ODA, mostly ODAs are coming through the bilateral relationship between the countries. Earlier, it was conventional that, you know, the developed countries are the major donor. Now, developing countries are donor, and BIMSTEC, two countries, India and Thailand, could play that important role in financing for development and supporting through ODA mechanism or aid for trade mechanism for the LDCs, because they will face serious challenges in not only in the graduation, sustainable graduation, but also meeting their SDG goals. All of them in South Asia, most of the countries are lagging behind their SDG goals for 2020-21. And the last is the question of Professor Prabir Dey, who talked about in the chat box. You see, I am not concerned, honestly speaking, about Indian investment inflow coming in from BIMSTEC members. No. My concern is, and I give you one of the most successful example of an FTA, which is NAFTA. When America and Mexico did the free trade agreement, who benefited? More than America. I mean, America benefited, but more than that, Mexico benefited, because the high cost manufacturing sector went from US to Mexico, and there was an investment shift. So I am not concerned that the BIMSTEC flow should come towards India. Rather, my concern would be, and these trade and investment flows would only happen if other member countries in BIMSTEC, especially the LDCs, allow, or including Sri Lanka, etc., allow investments to come from India and Thailand to them, because that is what requires truly for making it more beneficial, because there are certain industries in India and Thailand, because of high cost, labor cost, and other things, is becoming less and less competitive. And unless the benefit of these investments going to more competitive country within the BIMSTEC region, and which can be brought by you know, the LDCs, and Professor Mustafiz was talking about, you know, the SEZs coming up in Bangladesh. There is SEZ in Bhutan in food selling. Why BIMSTEC countries, Thailand, India, cannot invest in these SEZ? That is what is important, because ultimately these SEZs are to export to these countries only. So unless that investment outflow will happen from India and Thailand to the BIMSTEC, actual regional integration will be very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, well, I mean, you have highlighted that the relations from SAARC, that's continuation of LDC status to Maldives after its graduations. Yes, I just want to add with sunset clause. Let's not provide that status. I mean, we only provide with, for a certain time period. Okay. Well, Nisha, during your first sessions, you talked about the role of IT-driven trade facilitations and also digitalization of many economic activities during this pandemic, COVID pandemic, and the attraction of foreign direct investment, particularly in IT sector. So my question is, how can BIMSTEC countries can cooperate with each other in promoting this digital economy and the use of this digital technology? Over to you, Dr. Disha.
Thank you, Osh. A very, very good question. Actually, if we have, just like all the countries under the requirements of the Trade Facilitation Agreement, each of the countries has a National Trade Facilitation Committee, right? If we were to have an institutional mechanism at the regional level where all the national trade facilitation bodies could come together, then a lot of cooperative arrangements can be entered into, and these will be more structured and more long lasting, and they would take into account what we are doing globally under the WTO agreement, and also we would extend those then to the regional side also. And yes, there are, so these mechanisms need to be put in place, and there are for instance, at seaports, we are now establishing port community systems. So if we simply on one aspect, seaports, if we were to have an exchange of ideas on how the seaports are getting digitized and how the port community systems are being set up in each of these countries, that would be a great learning experience for all of them. Similarly, at the land posts also now, at the integrated checkposts, India is looking at how these port community systems can be set up at land ports. So we don't know, for instance, what is happening in the other BIMSTEC countries. So here again, the countries could come together and exchange experiences and learn from each other. So if we are doing something on one aspect, maybe other countries are doing well in some other aspect of digitization, because digitization is it's a whole range, and you're applying it to a whole range of issues, and so that's where the learning can happen. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Dr. Nisha. Now I turn to Dr. Phunkong. Well, Dr. Phunkong, here I was just listening this 72 days sessions, but what I found was we barely touched upon the issues of this service trade and cooperation in service trade. Well, I mean, in your first round of discussions, you have talked about tourism, and also this cooperation in education services. So my question to you is, how can we promote trade and services in general, and tourism and this education services in particular in BIMSTEC countries? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. BIMSTEC country have a cross culture, and people-to-people connectivity is the first priority for BIMSTEC. Like first step to move to the FTA or investment. So from Thailand side, I think many Thai people need to travel to India, to Bangladesh for visiting history past about the Buddhist or some place. So I think the first priority, I think we should bring the business sector meet together and have a network. Work in business sector is very important. Is a first priority. If we have a network, we can exchange business view, and we can exchange tourism together in the future. In my study, I found that some part of Thailand have a potential to be a long stay for India who work in telecommunication or digital economy. We have a very beautiful Iceland or very food and have a strong technology of connectivity or telecommunication. I think we should talk together in a bilateral between Thailand, India, Thai, Bangladesh, or Thai, Sri Lanka to have a network of business and exchange tourism together. Thank you. And I would like to mention to respond to question from Dr. Prabi. As you mentioned in the chat box, what a blueprint for Thailand. Is Thailand is going to be chairman of BIMSTEC? I think Thais, we focus on exchange knowledge and how make Thai people know about what is BIMSTEC, what Thai people or what people in BIMSTEC can have a common interest in FTA in the future. I think as have a complete FTA in the near future is a hard job for BIMSTEC. But from our research, we recommend Thai people, our government to give knowledge for Thai people, know what BIMSTEC, what is the BIMSTEC, and what we can gain from BIMSTEC. That is first priority. So in my private view, I will recommend Thai government to exchange knowledge among members in the first priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Punko. Now I turn to Dr. Dakal. Dr. Dakal, you have raised the issues of this regulatory infrastructure, as well as issues of high cost at the border, as well as high transport and transit time. And also so here my question is, and also you raised the issues of the issues of a business environment. So how can BIMSTEC countries could cooperate in reducing trade and transport cost, as well as improving business environment? And also, there is one suggestions in the chat box by Ricardo Saurabh. He has suggested to have some sort of mutual recognition agreement among the BIMSTEC countries, particularly with regard to documentations and custom procedures. So could you reflect on these suggestions also? Over to you, Dr. Dakal. Dr. Dakal?
Yes, am I on mute now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Pandey, for the question. One answer to both of your questions is this. We have seen so many documents there. We have lots of documents saying that, okay, we have this agreement, that agreement. The only way that we can come together is to implement those practices, the regulations that we have already implemented, the paper. So to answer, how can we, first question to answer, how can we reduce trade and transport cost is, of course, one is to go paperless. The main reason that we are having too many, cost associated with the transit is, of course, one is infrastructure, that is always there. But other thing which we can easily handle is paperless, go paperless, or make the regulatory so smooth that it can be easily implemented and not for the sake of having it on the paper. Number one. Number two, how can we increase, our business environment? I think business environment is not a standalone process. It has to be implemented through many processes. Many sectors has to come together, and also it's not easy. Just like, let's say, Bhutan has implemented, it's gonna be happen. So all BIMSTEC country will have to come together, and will have to understand on a common forum, and saying that first steps is every country will have to check, and then next is like all BIMSTEC will come together and start increasing the business. So, for example, one or two areas that we can do is, why don't we spend on S&M, encourage more humans to come together, to come forward. Why don't we make our business environment so safe and not so much unrealistic, not so much uncertain. So all those policies will have to come into place. Again, we are talking about policy here. So to come to third point, I think Mr. Ricardo has expressed on using, what is that? The delay in trade, and the recommendation was, can mutual recognition agreement handle it? Why not? It can, definitely, but why only with two bilateral country? Why not? We can have those kind of MRA agreement with the BIMSTEC, so that every nation, every region, every country in the regions will be benefited. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Dakal. Now I turn to Dr. Subhashini. Dr. Subhashini, you have raised the issues of geopolitics, and also this issues of foreign direct investment. Well, so my question to you is, how do you see the role of BRI in BIMSTEC? And also, how do you see the prevalence of negative list in most of our national investment policy in promoting foreign direct investment in BIMSTEC region? Over to you, Dr. Subhashini.
Yeah, so I must admit I'm not doctor. I'm just Miss Subhashini, but thank you. But yeah.
Okay, so, you'll be in near future. You will be in near future.
Thank you. Just quickly to add on FDI, I will touch also on what Dr. Rajesh said. It is very related to geopolitics and Sri Lanka's, sort of suspicion and fear of major power politics and how Sri Lanka will be affected by them. Like what Dr. Rajan said, overall, the problem of FDI, whether it's India from anybody else, is not really that Sri Lanka doesn't want it, but like Dr. Dakal said, it's just that nobody wants to invest in our countries. Reality is that Sri Lanka thought we will get a lot of FDI. All our problems were related to the war and security. And once the war ended, Sri Lanka will see this huge inflow of FDI into the country, but it didn't, for exact reasons that Dr. Dakal said, business environment, right? Where India or China or United States or any other major power in the world, when they try to get into Sri Lanka's strategic sectors like ports and energy, where Sri Lankans feel that these are very important sectors for the country, and we don't want these sectors to be, somehow owned and operated by these major powers. So then that is why the Adani ports, when they invested in port sector, there was a lot of uproar against it, and of course the India oil tanks in Trincomalee, there is a lot of uproar against Indian investments. So these are very unique situations, but overall lack of FDI has very little to do with whether it's India from anywhere else, but Sri Lanka has to fix its FDI regime, and I'm sure most of the other countries in the region has the same issue. And I will just touch a little bit on the MRA, because to share an experience, the mutual recognition agreement on standards, if it involves harmonization, forget it. These countries will not ever be able to harmonize. So our suggestion, even between India and Sri Lanka, has always been, let's have MRAs on conformity assessment procedures. India can keep its own standards. We only want India to accept certification issued by Sri Lanka, saying Sri Lanka products standards. In the long term, right, we talk about processed foods and Indian standards, and it was sorted out even without an MRA, just through accreditation. where Indian authorities simply accredited Sri Lankan labs, saying that that they can actually competently do certification against Indian standards. And Dr. Rajan, we even wrote papers on that. The Sri Lankan labs can simply upload the certificates onto the portal where Indian authorities have access. So some of these things require simple solutions, and these are better, and you will actually be able to implement them if the governments don't get involved too much. If anything requires negotiations between our countries, it will be a long process and results are not guaranteed. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suhashini. Well, I think what's the time? We have just 1 minute. Dr. Shalim,
no,
can
Dr.
we have?
Pandey, we can take few more minutes if you want.
Okay. So I think, I mean, we have already addressed the questions. I mean, you put in the chat box.
I have a comment, Dr. Pandey.
Okay. Over to you then.
Okay, sure. And then you can wrap up.
Yeah,
It's more of a comment rather than a question. Because we had very interesting discussion about trade and investment integration and FTA. What I think that while we have frustration about the progress on FTA or integration, I think we should not be very pessimist about FTA. Because, and that's what I am targeting actually, Rajanji, because you were probably, I hinted a little bit of pessimism from you, and probably you need to clarify on that. The reason I'm saying that FTA is not a panacea, but at the same time, it works as a kind of necessary condition to have deeper integration. And I think we should emphasize on that. There is most of these countries in the BIMSTEC, they're actually aspiring for very deeper FTAs with the countries outside of this region. For example, Bangladesh wants to be a member of ASEAN. Bangladesh even wants to be a member of RCEP. But why you didn't see the much interest in integrating the BIMSTEC or SAFTA? As a weak country, that Bangladesh has an LDC, Bangladesh enjoys duty-free market access in India, but where Bangladesh maintains a long sensitive list. That means there is a lot of responsibilities on the Bangladesh side to actually work on these FTAs. And as Professor Mustafizur Rahman rightly mentioned, this post-Ldc graduation would be extremely important for Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. How do they actually engage with the regional partners? And I fully take your point, Dr. Rajan Ratna, that in the SAFTA clause that is there, and should be the BIMSTEC FTA, that should also be there. But for how long? It can't be an indefinite period. So these three countries, they should also realize that there would be some period where they can actually capture gain or that benefit. But after that, this will be gone. So they have to actually trade on MFN basis or not the concessions. So that means that FTA would be very, very important. My second point, and that I'll finish by saying that I think, and probably you all agree on that just keeping aside the preferences, the Bangladesh enjoys, and Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, they enjoy duty-free market access in India as an LDC. But if we keep aside all these preferences, think just the scenario that these South Asian countries, the BIMSTEC countries, they trade on MFN basis. But we all would agree that they actually don't trade on MFN basis. Because of the high trade cost, it's a disadvantage for them to trade amongst themselves. So I think here comes the necessity of what you rightly mentioned, all panelists very rightly, that the issue of trade facilitation, connectivity, and other things. And the irony is that despite Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan enjoys duty-free market access in India, these high trade cost actually works as a disincentive for them to even increase trade with the region. So I think if we can take these issues in the BIMSTEC agenda, I think we all will be benefited. And I really want to be on the optimistic side, though I have a lot of frustration, and probably we are the same people talking in the same forum over the last 20 years or so. But let's keep up our hope, keep up our hope, and we look forward to some good result, at the end of this month after the summit is over. Thank you. I know Dr. Rajan Ratna respond.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shalim. I just want to, 2 or 3 points. What you have said about Ldc graduation, all these things. Okay, I also highlighted the need for this sunset clause for extension of this Ldc status in BIMSTEC. Also, highlight that raise that issues, and this BIMSTEC countries can help graduating Ldc, well, maybe in reducing trade cost. That is, as you rightly mentioned, Sam, that the issue of connectivity, in helping promoting infrastructure, developing infrastructure, and also some helping trade facilitation. That is one point. And much more important point is promoting value-added trade, particularly of the graduating countries. That is helping or hand-holding these countries in participation of regional value chain. So that when whatever loss we incur because of this removal of all those trade preferences, maybe in the developed countries, quota free market access, and others, GSPs, so that this country can make up by this helping in trade in value-added products and participations in value chain. Okay, that is my point. Well, I don't see. Okay, there is one question in the chat box. Okay, so I think now we have already crossed our allocated time. I think we need to.
Why can I make 1 minute intervention?
Another session. Oh, please, sure.
Dr. Pandey, Dr. Rajan Ratta wants to say something.
Okay.
Yeah, basically just what Salim Bhai said. I don't see it as optimism or pessimism. I see it purely as a criticism. As a think tank and as an academician who are working in this region, 24 years of optimism, 30 years of optimism in SAARC, what has it delivered? This is a high time, and that is why I am slightly maybe sounding bitter, but I know how these FTAs, how things, policy changes are made. Honestly speaking, if we all can go to the big political bosses in telling, why are you wasting your officials' time, officials' travel, and so much funding? Because for 20 years you are negotiating without doing anything. Stop it, man.
Good.
And there would be a political will which will say, sign this agreement, and you will see it being signed within 1 year time. What requires is a good, strong political will. That cannot come presently in this region with so much gaga optimism. We have been doing it. You have been doing, we all have been writing how countries would benefit. Did it ever translate into real action? So that is where I am saying, I am optimist, yes. But my approach now is slightly different, having seen all the worlds. I have negotiated, I know how trade agreements are negotiated. If the political bosses say, India agreement, 2 meetings and it was signed. It was not one of the best agreements, but it was signed. So many agreements are like that. India and BIMSTEC, it has a long history how it started. I can talk long, but I don't want to. But what I see is, if today there is a very strong political will which comes out and gives the direction, all the negotiators will fall in line. And so long as you do not do that, we can continue to be optimistic without anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rajan Bhai. Sorry.
Host,
okay.
Can I make a point?
Okay, sure.
Just
maybe in 2 minutes, yeah. 1 or 2.
No. I just wanted to add that the connectivity initiatives that are being implemented as we speak, I think that gives us hope, and I think that could be an important driver of deepening trade cooperation. We are talking about many, tariff issues, but I think that transport connectivity, and if we can put the trade facilitation and logistics in place, private sector will do the rest. Thank you.
Thank you. I think now I have to close the session. And before that, I'm not going to, summarize, all these discussions, but I just want to highlight, few key messages out of this session. The first one, as I understand, is BIMSTEC countries should think of holistic approach in regional cooperation and go beyond FTA and tariff reduction. Here we need to boost regional value chain. And for this, we need to have a good connectivity. We need to facilitate customs pressure, and also needs to reduce trade and transport cost. And also we need to harmonize that regulatory system and the regulatory infrastructure. That is one key message I got from this. And the second key message is this BIMSTEC countries should go for digital cooperations also. Particularly it helps in reducing trade cost, as well as it also helps to upgrade in global value chain by using digital technology and digital services. For example, you can cooperate in digital informations and the use of digital technology, or maybe in using digital payment, for custom payment and all these things. Okay, digital and cooperations could be another area. And the third is basically what Mustafiz Bhai emphasized, that's the connectivity. Here connectivity, both physical and digital connectivity, as well as high quality infrastructure. These should be the key drivers for our regional cooperation, for deepening our integration. But again, here, while we are talking about this connectivity, particular attention should be given to the need of landlocked countries, particularly Nepal and Bhutan, to link these countries to coastal ports. That is, very important. And the final message is what Rajan Bhai highlighted, that the political activism as well as political commitment is must to take forward this regional cooperation process. Thank you. I stop over here. Over to you, Salim.
Thank you very much,
Salim.
Yes, thank you so much. And I thank you and all the panelists. It was an excellent session, excellent discussion. And especially, I like the kind of question and answer and the response from all the panelists too. It's very lively, and we want to continue this lively discussion in the future. And also I thank the participants. We have a very small closing session now, where we have tried to summarize some of the points, and it is very draft stage. It's not something finalized. We will share with all the partner. Also some of the, all the participants and panelists too, if you have comments. So before, within the next 1 week or so, if you send your comments on the draft, then we'll try to make it final, and then we'll share this draft with the, the delegations who are there, to be there in Colombo for the summit, so that if some of the points can be taken into consideration. With this, I'd like to conclude this session, and thank you so much once again. And we'll just take a couple of minutes break to convene the next closing session. Thank Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Posh, Nisha.
Thank you.
all
Thank
the
you.
Thank you,
friends.
everybody.
Thank you, friends.
Rajan.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Rajan, thank you.
Don't
Thank
go
you,
away.
thank you.
We are having a closing session, so stay tuned. Just a couple of minutes break.
Okay. Okay, Salim. Well done.
Thank you, sir. Shoaib, I'm just checking whether we have got all the panelists for the closing session. Ambassador Sumit, I can see him. Yes.
We are here.
Ambassador Barnard, if he's here, I think.
I would like Mustafa to remain and stay with
Yes,
us.
please.
And Poshraj, Prabir.
Yes, Dr. Pandey.
Posh,
Yes, sir.
yeah,
Hi, Sumit.
yeah.
How are you?
Great, huh? It seems.
Really?
No, I'm seeing from you, seeing from the small
Sumit,
window.
Sumit, so good to see you. Huh?
My God, Mustafa, same with me. Yes.
We miss you in Dhaka.
Okay.
Not from the heart to heart, huh?
Yeah.
May I check if Dr. Surat is here?
Prabir, why don't you check?
I think I see his name.
Yeah.
He has confirmed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Hello.
Good to
Hello,
see you.
Prabir. Hello,
My
Surat.
God.
Safid is here.
Hello.
Long life for you.
So, okay, I think we can start. So, Mr. Sumit, we have the kind of format we can follow that I'm going to read out the draft, and then each of you can make a comment on that, if you think. And then in any case, it's a very draft which is being prepared by us, and also we'll be sharing this draft with all the participant organizations as well as the participants and panelists, and we'll expect their comments within a week or so. So if you allow me, Sumit Nakandale, for the chair of this session, so I can read it. Okay, so thank you. Welcome everyone once again to this closing session. So we are closing the second Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue 2022. And so I'm reading out the kind of summary, which is definitely not the perfect one. It's very drafted, as I said earlier, but let me go through this draft. In continuation of the academic collaboration incepted through the first Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue held on 8 to 11 February 2021, we are glad to announce the immense success of the second Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue 2022, hosted virtually on 11-12 March 2022. The second iteration of the dialogue has brought together economists, scholars, academicians, development experts, and policymakers of the Bay of Bengal region and catalyzed a comprehensive, in-depth intellectual exchange spanning issues crucial to the integration of the region. Echoing the appeal of the current regional context, the second Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue was convened on the theme of building resilient BIMSTEC. The participants of the second Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue 2022 reflected on the status quo pertaining to function of the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, BIMSTEC, and explored avenues for furthering channels and mechanisms of regional cooperation in the areas of trade, investment, infrastructure, connectivity, and social and cultural harmonization. Throughout the organized sessions and special sessions, the participants assessed the prerequisites for increased trade and investment in the region. An assessment of the factors influencing the trade regime of individual countries, the region as a whole, has been carried out by the dialogue. In the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and shifting geopolitical currents, it is imperative that government and private actors expedite institutional frameworks for facilitating cross-border trade and investment. The dialogue observed that it is high time for BIMSTEC partners to discard any hesitancy related to engagement in free trade and other necessary agreements and at the same time advance innovative solutions in relation to regional investments. Acknowledging the historical context of the Bay of Bengal region, the participants in the dialogue diagnosed the political economic challenges to enhance the areas of cooperation under the BIMSTEC framework. The building blocks of future initiatives for deeper integration rest on concerted policy actions targeting the expansion of border and infrastructure connectivity. As the prime body for multi-sectoral partnership in the region, the BIMSTEC body has the capacity to bring together stakeholders of the region and facilitate connectivity projects in the areas of trade and infrastructure. The dialogue proposes increased public diplomacy and mass media engagement on the part of the BIMSTEC. The BIMSTEC should initiate effective dialogue for removal of tariff and non-tariff restrictions and promotion of regional investment and trade nexus. Notably, with the growing wave of digital infrastructures in all the countries in the region, there has now emerged a new scope for cross-border connectivity. This new scope has the potential to address fundamental issues underlying the integration process and impact the initiatives for integration in the global and regional value chains. However, for effective functioning of the BIMSTEC, the partner countries, irrespective of the size of their economies, need to initiate specialized policies and revamp the existing programs in place. Political commitment of the state actors is a key to strengthening the multidimensional network that the BIMSTEC has the potential to become. The dialogue realizes the need for a strong flow of culture and social exchange across the border. With rich history of shared culture and social values in the region, people-to-people contacts has the potential to progress at a greater velocity and in the process, mobilize a cross-border civil society. Strengthen social and cultural ties among the peoples of the region is essential for a bottom-up approach towards regional integration and can have considerable impact on the political processes facilitating multi-party collaboration. Both formal and informal networks of academia, businesses, and administrations can greatly benefit from increased level of people-to-people contacts. Moreover, youth connectivity across borders has the potential to provide new impetus to the whole process. Finally, we believe that as a multi-party platform, this dialogue embodies the spirit of cooperation and hope that this forum will continue to facilitate vital exercises aiding policymakers and stakeholders in materializing the shared vision of regional integration in the Bay of Bengal. To conclude, over to you, Ambassador Singh.
Thank you. I think that's a very, what should I say, very concise document in a draft form, although on the matters that we have discussed yesterday and today. Ambassador Gunatilaka, Dr. Salim, Prabir, Poshraj, and our common friend Surat. It's a great privilege to participate in the concluding session of the second Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue, which we have started in 2021, which is really relevant to the progression of the BIMSTEC and the regional integration of across the Bay of Bengal states. Now, I have listened very attentively to the deliberations yesterday and today. And even today, especially the preceding session, I have listened very, very carefully to the submissions by Professor Mustafa and then our good friend Rajan Ratna and others. It was Rajan Ratna who helped me when he was the director, he was working with the Trade and Investment Division in the UNESCAP Secretariat to analyze the negative list. So I think he has a valid point to explain. One of the things which came very clearly, in fact, Rajan had very clearly articulated, maybe in a crude manner, but he harped on one important thing which I have been stating for last so many years the importance of the political will. Now that is something that we need to understand. That is one aspect which I want to dwell during the concluding session. Now, how do we at the track 1.5 do this? This is important. The political will, it's the state. We have 7 states, sovereign states. How do we influence the political will? Now, for me, as the first Secretary General of the BIMSTEC, it took 2 years to explain to the biggest economy in the group that India must take the lead. This happened. The culmination was the 2016 BRICS BIMSTEC Outreach Summit in Goa. Now, during that summit, we have taken a number of progressive decisions. Now, that is what I call the political will. Prime Minister Modi was able to gather all the leaders of BIMSTEC member states. I was personally present there, and I saw the expression of explicit expression of the political will. Now, even 2016, the leaders agreed, and then thereafter in 2018, the Kathmandu summit, leaders agreed, which we have discussed for last 2 days, the early conclusion of the BIMSTEC FTA. Now, for last so many years, we discussed this. Prabir, Salim, Mustafizur, all of us, all our friends. If the BIMSTEC FTA is not possible, what is possible? What will bring us together? There should be something. Now, I think it is crystal clear. There are things, of course, if the FTA is not going to happen, because we are harping on old theories, which are, of course, I'm not discarding those theories. These are very valid theories of regional economic integration. But the connectivity, which Mustafizur and others were very profoundly submitting. What is possible? What will bring us together? What will ignite the regional integration in the Bay of Bengal? Now, that is why, again, during my explanation yesterday, let us look at the scenario from 1300 to 1500 AD. How did the region looked? How did the integration, their own terms, happen? So, connectivity is very important. Trade facilitation will be very important. Now, these are some of my thoughts which I would like to share with you today. These are not new thoughts. My friends in the forum knows these views very well. I will submit 2 proposals during this concluding session. One, the role of the chair. Now, I think we need to define, I have not seen the charter, but I think the chair must have a very specified role. Now, next chair will be Thailand. We need to help Thailand collectively to carry out this mandate. So there should be some mandate, some support for the chair to carry out the responsibilities and then guide the organization during that chairmanship. That's number 1. Number 2, this year we are marking the 25 years of the establishment of BIMSTEC. It's high time that we have a assessment of what we should be doing next 5 to 10 years. We have taught this idea of having a group of eminent persons. It's not a bad idea, but to have a group of eminent persons from all the 7 member states to have a roadmap. This is the second point that I I wish to share with you today. Despite the decimal picture and then pessimism expressed by some of our friends, there had been some important developments in BIMSTEC since the establishment of the BIMSTEC Secretariat in 2014. One important milestone is the completion of the charter. Right now, the BIMSTEC Secretariat is adequately staffed. I suppose 7 directors are there. Charter will be signed, which will be in effect immediately after the signing. What we need is to work together. When we started in BIMSTEC Secretariat in 2014, there was only one director plus the Secretary General. And our friends would know how hard we struggle to carry forward the agenda set forth since 1997. So I am very optimistic. The BIMSTEC will succeed, as I have been telling, like a parrot. It will succeed. It may take some more time, but it will succeed because it's an organic link running from the historical facets. This region was integrated. This region was integrated, and Bay of Bengal was the center of world economy at one point of time. So I don't see any reason why we should regain that position today, since the center of growth is now coming back to the Asian continent. So with those words, thank you, Salim. Thank you very much for putting this effort. And we'll be looking forward to see the final outcome document, which I will certainly will be sharing with the Sri Lankan authorities and then with the Secretariat. Let us see what be the outcome of the 5th BIMSTEC summit, which will be held in Colombo later this year. I think we all are optimistic on that note. This is nothing but social justice project for the people of the Bay of Bengal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Nakandala. Thank you for your comments. May we now request Ambassador Barnett to share your views, please? Share your comments, closing comments.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, but we can't see you properly.
Yeah, we can't see you, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you have to adjust your...
All right.
Yes, I think it's much better.
Good enough. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much indeed. Ambassador Nakandala, thank you very much for the comments you made a little while ago. Dr. Salim Raihan, Dr. Prabir De, Dr. Poshraj Pandey, Dr. Surat Horachaikur, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me congratulate Dr. Salim Raihan and his colleagues at SANEM for organizing the 2nd Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue 2022. As a founder member, the Pathfinder Foundation is pleased to be associated with the dialogue this year. BIMSTEC's resilience lies in the Bay of Bengal, which brings sustenance to the region and its people, representing over 1/5 of the global population. As the name suggests, it is primarily an economic organization focusing also on security. There are no border issues or intractable political differences involving the member countries, which helps the organization move ahead without being saddled with serious bilateral political or security issues. Consequently, what is required is to succeed political will and determination to forge ahead. The fourth BIMSTEC summit formulated an ambitious plan for institutional reform and revitalization of Bay of Bengal community, targeting economic and security cooperation. Our discussion yesterday and today are timely, given that the fifth BIMSTEC summit is due to be held in Colombo within the next few weeks. 2022 marks the 25th anniversary of the founding the regional cooperation structure for the Bay of Bengal. Such an auspicious event calls for critical assessment of our organization's achievement thus far. In this respect, the theme Building Resilient BIMSTEC for the second dialogue is appropriate. The organization has achieved important milestones to harness regional cooperation and integration in the Bay of Bengal. In 2014, we established the Secretariat in Dhaka. 2 years later, BIMSTEC leaders participated in the BRICS BIMSTEC Outreach Summit in Goa, as Ambassador Nakandala mentioned just now, which demonstrated their commitment and renewed interest to deepen regional cooperation. We are grateful to the leadership of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi for spearheading the rejuvenation of the fundamental principles of BIMSTEC. However, it is a matter of regret that BIMSTEC had failed to finalize the FTA despite the passage of nearly 2 decades. It is noteworthy that inter-regional trade is limited to approximately 7% of the total trade. We share the view of other members that trade and services integration in the Bay of Bengal is an essential prerequisite for harnessing the full potential of the regional integration process. The BIMSTEC summit will nonetheless witness the conclusion of the BIMSTEC Charter, which is an essential ingredient for the effective functioning of the Secretariat. Although this process had taken more time than expected, the conclusion of the Charter signifies the collective commitment and desire of the member states for greater integration. The Colombo Summit will also witness the conclusion of BIMSTEC Connectivity Master Plan and the Convention on Mutual Legal Assistance on Criminal Matters. In terms of integrating integration gains, the BIMSTEC Connectivity Master Plan is understandably a pivotal component. Of particular interest to Sri Lanka in the current context is the MOU signed by the foreign ministers in 2018 on grid interconnection, on which the Grid Interconnection Coordinating Committee is holding discussions currently. The extensive deliberations during the last 2 days, covering subjects such as post-COVID-19 challenges and opportunities, infrastructure connectivity, people-to-people contacts, and trade and investment will provide the required inputs for building resilient BIMSTEC. What is essential is the political will, as was highlighted by many today and yesterday, political will of the member states at high political level to give effect to the regional cooperation efforts. That includes the much delayed FTA. Can we have a plan, for example, for the next 5 years, identify low-hanging fruits and try to reach out to them? so that we could fulfill the desire of the member countries with regard to total integration. As a founding member of the Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue, we at Pathfinder Foundation will give our full support to deepen the regional cooperation agenda of BIMSTEC. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Bernard Gunatuleke. Thank you for your comments. May I now request Dr. Probir De from ASEAN India Center, RIS.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raihan, co-panelists, Professor Mustafizur, all the participants. We started yesterday in the afternoon, Bangladesh time, and we are concluding a very serious second dialogue in the evening time. Over more than 24 hours, we have dealt with several subjects, very important subjects, which are coming up. Hopefully will be listed in the agenda. The leaders, when they meet few weeks from now, few days from now in Colombo, certainly these are the points will be there in the discussion. And I'm very impressed by the organizer, Dr. Raihan and his team, Soeb, Israt, and many others who worked day and night to make it a grand success. Remind you, all the participants and those who are watching us through social media, it took enormous of our time, organizing it in such a short notice. Because if you compare what we did last year, last year was more academic type. We look for papers, etc., etc. And this year, rather, we decided, given that several constraints, and we decided to have it more kind of a panel discussion, pointing to the major challenges of the region that they're facing, in connectivity, in trade investment, post-COVID recovery, etc., etc. So I'm sure that these are the today's outcome. What Dr. Raihan, just you introduced to this the end last session would be very useful, and leaders will take a note of it. We from RIS, we are continuing to be part of it. This is the network that has emerged out of the 4th BIMSTEC Summit Joint Statement. If you refer the 4th BIMSTEC Summit Joint Statement, the leaders, they give it direction. The direction for what? To have more interaction among the civil society, among think tanks. So this is the Bay of Bengal Economic Forum in the name of Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue. We have been organizing since last year as an outcome of the 4th BIMSTEC Summit declarations. Today, we complete the second in edition. Hopefully in the coming years, there will be more such editions. This network should continue. There is strong participation, not only from the BIMSTEC member countries, but also from Bay of Bengal countries like Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. They equally share the Bay of Bengal water. And BIMSTEC is a natural progression for South Asia looking towards the east. It is connecting with the Southeast and East Asia. So this forum has an immense value, and I'm sure as we go ahead, we will have more activities and under Dr. Raihan's leaderships, under the leadership of the Bangladesh professors, Ambassador Sumit's guidance. And I have nothing more to add. I thank once again to you for coming up with a very useful declaration, a summary draft. And hopefully after the summit, we will be able to share it with all the participants, panelists, and the BIMSTEC Secretariat, and all the member countries' focal points and the leaders there. Thank you very much. Namaskar from myself.
Thank you, Dr. Probir De. And I must tell each of you that Dr. Probir De has been the most instrumental person in organizing this event. So, we are immensely grateful to you. And it has been a pleasure, working with you, and Sanem team is grateful to you for your enormous help and, continuous engagement, to make this program a success. May I request Dr. Parshas Pandey to share your concluding remarks, please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shalim, Ambassador Sumit Nakandala, Ambassador Bernard Gunatilake, Dr. Shalim, Dr. Prabir, Dr. Surat. Well, I think this second Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue is a grand success. I congratulate Dr. Shalim Ryan and also thank Sanim colleagues for providing all this logistics support. Well, I've taken a lot of time in the previous session, so I don't want to take much time, but I just want to submit 2 or 3 agenda. The first one, without any prejudice and without hurting my very old friend and first General Secretary of BIMSTEC Secretary General. Well, my first submission is BIMSTEC Secretariat has neither financial resources nor human resources to carry out its mandate. That is, further BIMSTEC-wide cooperation. So my submission is its role, that's the BIMSTEC Secretariat's role, should be strengthened, and it should establish a very strong research wing, professionally headed by Deputy Secretary General, and which would be able to support the chair, to carry forward, as suggested by Sumit, to carry forward the responsibility of the chair, as well as to carry forward the responsibility of the Secretary General. That is one my submission. And my second submission is, is with regard to the interest of least developed countries, the landlocked countries. We are talking about this connectivity even to the needs of landlocked countries. In our case, particularly Nepal and Bhutan. That is my second submission. And my third and last submission is that I think one of the BIMSTEC member heading towards external crisis, and during this upcoming summit, BIMSTEC summit, BIMSTEC head of state or head of government should come up with a mechanism to observe shocks faced by member in crisis, particularly that shocks should be observed by region. We should be able to observe shocks regionally instead of making individual member responsible to tackle that shocks. Well, these are my humble submissions. Well, I stop over here and see you in the third Bay of Bengal dialogue next year.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pandey. I must mention that Mr. Achyut Bhandari is associated with the Center for Research on Bhutanese Society, CRBS, this organization is also a partner of this initiative. He's unable to join us in this closing session, but we are grateful to his collaboration and also his input throughout the organizing this program. So thanks to Mr. Achyut Bhandari. Now, may I invite Dr. Surat Borachaikul to share his concluding remarks, please. You have to unmute, Professor Surat.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be here, and I'm very sorry for not being able to contact a lot of people, especially Salim Raihan, with regard to a number of meetings and so on. So a lot of things going on in here. And my study center is now facing quite a crisis in status. This is because of COVID-19. And my authority will become clearer after 31st March. So Professor Chirayut heads the South Asian Study Center. And at the same time, he is also Deputy Director of the Institute of Asian Studies. And I hope this center, which I have been running, will be under Institute of Asian Studies soon. And then things might become, better than before, hopefully. So very nice to see Ambassador Sumit Nakandala here. Okay, Ambassador Bernard Punatileke here, Professor Mustafir Zur Rahman, good friend. We still remember dinner we had next to Chao Phraya River, and of course, nice meeting Professor Posh Raj Pandey, okay, and our close good friend Prabir Dey, which of course the first BIMSTEC terminology came to my mind when we met at Taj Hotel in Kolkata long time back, okay, which I should not mention the year, otherwise you would know Professor Prabir Dey's age, okay. And of course, Professor Salim Raihan has been a wonderful person, and as Professor Chirayut has also informed me that you have been so kind and you have been quite engaged with him also, which is okay, because in the end, my center and the think tank network will be merged into one like that in the future. Now, I don't know much to say, but at the parliamentary committee and of course at Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they have invited me from time to time, because Thailand will be holding the chair of BIMSTEC this year. So of course, I have been with them. I have been with also National Security of Council from time to time on a number of issues. But you see, before I end my remarks here, I would like to mention something about what Ambassador Nakandala has just mentioned, because this actually is something quite important, the word political will, right? You see, the current geopolitics right now, okay, worries a lot of people, okay? But again, there is no one building the narrative of BIMSTECs also, What does it mean, What would it mean in this context, right? Unfortunately, I'm not sure, I'm not diplomat, but I will say it very frankly to you that civil servants are too occupied, okay, too occupied. They cannot play proactive roles in building scenarios and creating, narratives of BIMSTECs, So when you talk about eminent person, for example, I think, we need to build up something about BIMSTECs, and it should not be about economy alone, because economics in itself, it's definitely a very important part of our life, but at the same time, it should have some bigger meanings to people of Bay of Bengal, right? So how do we do that, right? I believe BIMSTEC is something for us in the future, and we need to be there. It will help us a lot. And until now, I have not found even a single publication, which could give us some imaginary world about what would BIMSTEC be, let's say in 10 or 15 years if we work together. Yeah. So don't blame the general public. I mean, they won't know what would happen. There will not be magic after the ratification of the charter, the signing of the charter. It will be business as usual. So, there needs to be some proactive move. What would it mean, how to create certain kinds of norm within the Bay of Bengal for everyone, right? I agree with Ambassador Nakandala when he said the region was integrated, and perhaps we can, bring out certain historical elements also within this. And I think Ambassador Nakandala also enjoyed Sunil Amrit talks about, the historical dimension of this Bay of Bengal and so on. So how do we create this imaginary world of BIMSTEC? What would it mean, and what would it, how would it be relevant to ordinary people, right? So yes, economic dialogue and then, think tank network whatsoever, these can be done. But again, BIMSTEC is already 25 years old. We cannot praise ourselves. We must be critical of ourselves that there has to be more to be done to make sure that it means something. I find that today, the current geopolitical situation is exerting all kinds of pressures. When you talk about Indo-Pacific economic framework, to certain countries in Southeast Asia, they don't see it as a kind of, cooperation gesture, but they are seeing it in some other light and so on. So can BIMSTEC be something of an alternative? I know you guys might be laughing something, but again, we have to have that imagination. We have to come up with something of that imagination. We have been connected, for example, some Thai students went to study Bengali in Kolkata, and one of them came back and told me that it's so many similarities, and so on. And unfortunately, the division, of nation state has basically blurred us into camps and so on. So again, right now, Russia's invasions of Ukraine, right now, BRI, Indo-Pacifics, and other kinds of things coming up, and we have to think of BIMSTEC within this concept. And when I talk about geopolitics, I think Professor Mustafizur Rahman, Professor Salim Rehan, and Professor Prabir, they will also agree with me that the word geopolitics is also geoeconomics now, because no longer it is about comparative advantage or other kinds of thing anymore, because politics now overwhelmed with this kind of frameworks, which camps do you belong to, are you from this side and so on, So again, we must not put these regions into that Cold War pictures like that all the time, We must also be able to use BIMSTECs to socialize, institutionalize, and make us safe. That this is something what member states want to be within that protections of BIMSTEC and so on. So this is something I want to share, and I want to end it here. But again, I see civil servants, they are working, okay. Diplomats, they are working, okay. But again, you are not seeing a proactive punch, you're not seeing that. So you need a kind of, I don't know, I cannot find and give you, but I feel it all the time that we are not going there. We are not reaching there yet, and we will not be able to reach there very fast unless we do something else also. We have to think out of the box, right? And make sure that, there are people who could actually convince our leaders, that this is one of the best way out for all of us. Bay of Bengal is there for all of us, in a sort of sense. So there are a number of projects in this part of the world which are, totally nonsense and so on, but they reach leaders, they convince leaders, with a good projects like BIMSTEC, regional integration, which is so of, paramount importance for all of us, and for maybe not for all of us now, but for the new generation, perhaps, because in a few years' time, we all might retire very soon or whatsoever. But again, how do we build that? How do we build that? When I talk about the visions of BIMSTEC, what would it mean if we could be there, all the times in my lectures, and students love it, So that was the kind of experiments that you can do it with youngsters as well. So again, if I may end it here, and thank you very much. And also, I hope after 31st March of this year, the status of the center will be much better than before. And I hope you also understand that, partly it's also a financial constraints that university is facing. This is simply because Thailand relies so much on tourism, and COVID-19 affects us tremendously, And again, this is something, should come as a national interest of Thailand as well. Why BIMSTEC would offer you something else as well, right? Because we now learn it by the hard way that, you cannot just put all the stakes on tourism, because this is what happens now, right? So thank you very much, all of you, and see you next time, perhaps. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Surat. Thank you so much. We are very much towards the end, but I don't really want to miss the opportunity of listening to very few words from two persons. One is Dr. Nihal Pitigala, and one is Professor Mustafa Rahman. So I'm just checking, Dr. Nihal Pitigala, are you with us? If you can hear a few words from you.
No, I'm actually delighted how everything has turned out with all the different participants. And there was so much of wealth of insights and knowledge over the last 2 days that we have accumulated. And it's, I think, first of all, thank you very much, Salim, for organizing this in such a robust and well synchronized fashion. And there was so much to learn for all of us, back and forth, and some good food for thought as well, reality check as we move forward. And I'm glad that you are in the quarter as I am, with all the difficulties that we have to be sort of proactive and optimistic, at least in some quarters. I also wanted to share a thought, maybe that we ourselves have to evaluate whether we are taking the right approach in communicating. That is something that Salim and the team and I, on our training program, we are looking at. And it's a process of give and take, and probably we have to evolve as well. But I learned a great deal from this, and I thank you very much. And all I wish is that we carry this momentum forward to the summit and probably beyond. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nihal Pitigala. Professor Mustafa Rahman, over to you.
Thank you, Selim. Just to register my deep appreciation to you and the team, Sanam team, and also the partners who have contributed to this second conference. I myself also, I agree with Dr. Nihal. I benefited a lot. You attend this type of session, and is equivalent to the 10 books that you have not had time to read, you know. so lot of, you know, insights and also, and I think that we do these, you know, events just not for our, you know, own benefit or knowledge, but also to advance a cause. And I think that is what really, you know, is important. And I know that Ambassador Sumit Nakandala, his excellent work when he was at the head of the Secretariat, Probir has been pursuing this, you know, so diligently, and is really an inspiration for us. Ambassador Bernard Gunatilake and the Pathfinders doing so many good things, and Surat, thank you for remembering that excellent dinner. We hope that, I hope that we can have another opportunity. But on a more serious note, I think that this has been an excellent event, Salim. Thank you. And I'm very happy that I could participate. The summit is coming. Let's see what transpires there. But my understanding of the evolving scenario is that you know, the world is going to change a lot. You know, in terms of the prices we will be paying for fuel, you know, gas, coal, you know, grains, and that will also push us towards alternatives. You know, reality it will become, you know, very, very different. I think, and I suspect. So more so the cause for deepening, you know, regional cooperation in amongst the countries of the region. I think that if our political leaders fail to take that cue, you know, it will be to the detriment of the people of our region. So I do hope that the Nihal mentioned about reality check. I think that reality check will, you know, inspire them to trigger, you know, policy changes towards deeper economic cooperation in the BIMSTEC. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mustafizur Rahman. So
thank you very much.
Over to you, Mr. Sumit Nakandala, for any final words.
Yes, Salim, thank you very much. And I'm very grateful to what Nihal just said, and then supplemented by Mustafizur and Surat and Ambassador Bernard Kunidilaka. Now, I want to share one sublime fact, that because I mentioned during my discussion, or rather my exposition, whatever, that chair has a specific responsibility. There is no written rule, but then it has to be innovative in terms of the basic fundamentals of the organization. But what happened, Sri Lanka assumed the chair of BIMSTEC in 2018, and 18 and 19, and by 20, all the BIMSTEC, not only BIMSTEC member states, but the entire world was engulfed with the COVID-19 pandemic. So, presumably, Sri Lanka as a chair had not been able to do much. I think this is understandable. Besides that, I must also tell in a lighter vein, after Sri Lanka assumed the chair of BIMSTEC in 2018, that was after the Kathmandu summit, there had been a bit of a political uncertainty within domestic politics in Sri Lanka, so that And in fact, I remember very much, tried so much hard, but then nothing had come forward. So this is a bit of a problem. Now, there is one important element which Surat, Ajahn Surat mentioned. How do you build a narrative for BIMSTEC? And that's a very important thing. I think building a narrative for
Not sure whether we lost the connection.
Yeah, I could not hear him. So
yeah, we have lost him actually. Yeah.
We have lost him. Yeah.
Let's wait for a few moments because I know there's a frequent power cut in Colombo.
Oh, he had something negative to say.
Yes.
All right, we'll wait for him. The power is on. There's no power cut today in Sri Lanka. So thankful.
No, I think he
power
lost
cut. Selim, power cut of powers have cut him off.
Right. Right. I think just wait. But in maybe he's not here.
Yeah,
now.
he's not. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's not here. So we can just wait for a few more seconds and then see. If not, then I think it's already late. So probably if we all agree, I can understand that what.
Excuse me,
yes.
I just got in touch with Ambassador Nakandala. He tells me that he lost connectivity. I do not know whether it is a power cut or an internet interruption. So he wanted me to communicate his inability to connect at this point of time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
very much. And we must also convey our gratitude to Ambassador Sumit Nakandala.
I will do so.
And, thank you. So I think it's now time to close this second Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue. I thank you once again. And I also thank the team who worked closely and very strongly and relentlessly throughout the past few weeks to make this a success, especially Sanem team led by Shoaib, Ishrat, Ashibur Rahman, Omar, Tuhin, Nadim, and some others who actually worked and closely with us. So I thank them all. And also, I take the opportunity to thank Dr. Pravir Dey for his continuous engagement with us. And he's the pioneer of regional integration in South Asia. And we should give him a kind of big hand for taking this initiative.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raihan, and you too, and your team there who worked day and night to make it a great success. I'm a follower of Professor Mustafizur, Rehman Sobonusar, and many others, Professor Surat. So it is just a learning experience for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So with this, we conclude this program, and thank you so much, and have a good evening and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Take care. Thank you.